All right, guys, today we're going to get into our anchor, just identifying what that means. It's going to give you a little bit of details, just kind of making sure that you don't have any questions and you really understand how this anchor can be used to your advantage, right? We literally call it the GPS because it's going to give you that overall direction and tell you what to do when you're on the charts. Okay, so mastering anchors, the GPS of trading. This is basically an introduction of what an anchor is. This is not the advanced version or anything like that. This is just to make sure you truly understand what an anchor is, what exactly you need to be looking for when you're on the charts, when identifying your anchor. And then I'm going to show you some examples of how to pull these things up as well. Okay, your anchor is represented by a multi-day pattern, either an M or W shape that marks the beginning or end of a cycle. An M pattern or an M anchor signifies a potential sell zone, and a W pattern or a W anchor indicates a potential buy zone. These anchors are going to be a minimum of 2 days, but can last weeks or months. Okay, this is very important because I don't want you coming to the charts and seeing 1 day of equal lows and saying that that's an anchor when it's not. That's just multi-session, not multi-day. So very important to make sure you remember that. Then we have our cycles, guys. Our cycles are going to be basically what our anchor is starting, okay? An anchor is going to be the beginning and end of each cycle. So your buy zone, you're going to notice down here, your buy zone or your bullish market is going to begin with an anchor W all the time, every time, right? Your sell zone is going to be a bearish market and begin with an anchor M. And here's where you're going to be looking for opportunities to sell. And it's going to end with the opposite anchor. So if a cycle starts with an anchor M, it will end with an anchor W. If a cycle starts with an anchor W, it will end with an M, okay? Now let's look at the different variations of our anchors, okay? I think at this point, we can all say collectively that we understand what an anchor is, right? It is a multi-day MRW pattern. We understand what exactly it's telling us. It's going to be telling us if the market is overall bullish or if the market is overall bearish, right? What that overall perspective is. I don't know about you, but as a trend trader, I need to know exactly what the market is getting ready to do overall so I can get on the bus with everyone else, right? I want to be trading in the same direction with the banks. Okay. And it's also going to help you understand what that overall trend is, just so you can make your informed trading decisions. If you're a trend trader, you want to go in the same direction as the market. But if you're a counter trend trader, even identifying the anchor is going to help you because you'll know, okay, the market is going bullish. I would normally be looking for equal lows to go higher, but because I'm counter trend trading, let me look for equal highs to go lower. Like this is literally something that can help you on both sides of the trading spectrum, okay? Now let's talk about these different variations of anchors. We have our regular M's and W's, right? Remember, this is a multi-day MRW. We have our regular M's and W's. We have our 12, our 22, 21, head and shoulders, half of that, extended leg M and outside M or W, and then outside structure M or W. These two at the bottom, guys, you're going to predominantly see those on the higher time frame. If you do happen to come across them on the M15, that's okay. But I want to make sure when you're identifying your anchor, especially if you're an intraday trader, we're looking for this specifically on M15. Okay. Now, if you identify an anchor on another time frame, the rules are going to be a little bit different, but it will still be multi-day M and W. It will still be any one of these variations. This is why I'm telling you, you'll probably see those extended leg outside structures on the higher time frame more so than anything else. Okay. Now let's talk about our sell zone. Let's talk about identifying our anchor M. Okay. Now, clearly, when it comes to identifying an anchor M, clearly that's going to be equal highs. Well, I want to make sure that we understand a few things. An anchor M is going to basically be signifying that a sell zone is getting ready to potentially happen, as well as a bearish market. Hopefully, you know they're both this one and the same. Okay. Look at the most recent price action to spot your anchor and then find the highest point of your anchor M and the lowest point of your anchor M. This is normally going to be your apex. You're wondering what an apex is? It's this little middle piece inside of your actual anchor, okay? And this is what it looks like on an anchor M. Once you've identified that, guys, this is going to tell you if you're still inside of the anchor or not. So not only are we identifying the anchor, but we're identifying the highest and lowest portion. So we'll know, okay, I'm actually in the anchor still or I'm not. If you're trading inside of the anchor, that's not always the greatest place to take your trade if you're an intraday trader, because you'll learn in just a few slides, an anchor is nothing more than a trap. And I want to make sure if I'm intraday trading, I'm really trying to get a significant amount of pips, right? I need at least 35 to 50 pips. That's the goal that I'm looking for. Trading inside of an anchor isn't going to necessarily guarantee you that. So at least identifying, okay, I'm still inside of my anchor, even though I see a position, is going to help you tremendously. Now, if you're marking this up on your charts, this is what you should be identifying, okay? The highest and lowest point on your anchor. So the highest being here, the lowest being here, okay? And then just notice how I marked it up and I used my box, and the highest point is the top of my box, the lowest point is the bottom. So any piece of price action that falls inside of this range is going to still be a part of this anchor, okay? So this just tells me a lot of information. One, I know that this is an anchor M. I'm potentially looking for opportunities to sell going forward. However, if I take a trade right now, I know that it might not render me the pips that I'm looking for from an intraday perspective, right? Now, if you're scalping, this might be ideal because you might be able to get a 10 to 15 pips, right? But if you're looking for that 35 to 50, I can't say that you're going to necessarily always get that here, because an anchor is literally nothing more than consolidation. All right, now let's talk about our anchor W. When identifying an anchor W, pretty much the same thing, just the opposite of what we talked about with an anchor M, okay? The anchor W pattern is significant and going to be telling you that we're entering into a bullish market or a buy zone, okay? You have to look at the most recent price action. I'm not scrolling back to 5 months ago, 5 weeks ago. What is price action doing right now to find and identify my anchor? Remember, we have to identify that lowest and highest point of said anchor. Now, because this is an anchor W, the lowest point is going to be at the bottom and the highest point is going to be here at the top. Now, the apex for an anchor W is going to be here, that little middle piece of this W. That's what we're looking for, okay? So identifying this, the same as I talked about with our anchor M. I'm going to mark that up. I'm going to place a box here. And this just tells me, okay, even though I do see there's potentially a position here, I'm still inside of my anchor. Let me trade with more caution. And let me just make sure I'm paying attention to what I've actually gotten into. If you do trade it, this would be ideal for, maybe 10 to 15 pips, but don't go for the gusto here, guys. Okay. Now, let me give you some tips, okay? An anchor is literally a trap. So if you're having a hard time identifying your anchors, guess what? Give yourself some grace. When I first started, I could see the anchor W's, but I couldn't see the anchor M's. It takes time. So if you're able to see one and not the other, guess what? Use the one that you can see to make money while you're learning how to identify and spot the other, right? So you're not stuck being a student, but you're continuously learning and practicing and getting better in your skill set, okay? So when we're breaking our anchor into bite-sized pieces, we'll start with this anchor W here. An anchor W is a trap, right? It's literally nothing more than a trap. So if you're having a hard time identifying what your anchor is doing, notice how we have a W here, an M here, and a W here. The reason why they call anchors traps, right here where we see this M on this anchor W, somebody would look at this and say, oh, coach, the market's getting ready to sell. It's getting ready to be bearish. Let me get into a bearish position and sell, right? Not paying attention to, wait a minute, this is not probably what I should be looking for. I'm at the end of a cycle already. Maybe this is a M in the midst of a bigger W. Let me just make sure that I'm trading accordingly, or be impatient and sitting on your hands, because that's a part of trading as well, right? Now let's go over here to this anchor M. This is a perfect example because I want y'all to see that it's not going to be textbook. So yes, an anchor M is an MWM over multiple days, but notice how this W that's in the middle is a head and shoulders, right? So just being able to see that alone is enough information for me to put together, okay, we're still absolutely inside of this anchor. So this is just a little tip. Hopefully this helps you all. and identifying, okay, if you're not really sure if you're seeing it properly, trust yourself and start marking it up. Do those simulations, build those biases, and let's see how the market plays out going forward. All right, now let's talk about, well, I know we talked about our anchors and the highest and lowest points and making sure, but let's talk about identifying our Vs, right? So we're in a bullish market, okay? A bullish market is going to be WVVM. We're going to be looking for opportunities to buy here, all of those things. This market starts with an anchor W, okay? It starts with an anchor W. I want to make sure you know where you should be viewing or looking for these actual Vs in your cycle, because if you're looking at them from too small of a perspective, you could potentially miss a move, or you could get out of a trade too late or too early, right? So we have our anchor W here, first V, second V, and we have our anchor M ending this bullish cycle or this buy zone, right? So with that being said, the Vs are your major pullbacks in a bullish market. They're normally going to happen off of the 50 EMA or the 200 EMA, okay? So your pullback to the 50 is normally going to be on the moderate to faster moving assets. Your pullback to your 200 is normally going to be on your slower moving assets. So if the 3 times ADR is like 75, 110, something like that, then it's probably going to pull back to that 200. But if you're noticing that 3 times ADR is like 385, 625, something like that, then it's potentially going to just pull back to that 50. I don't know if you can tell, this pair that we're looking at here on this example is GBP-JPY, which is normally a faster moving asset, and the pullbacks do happen on the 50 exponential moving average here. Now, if the market is moving slow, remember, sometimes you're going to come to the charts and that 3 times ADR, even though GJ is a fast moving pair, maybe the 3 times ADR is going to be like 120 this day or 120 this week. That could potentially mean that that pullback is going to come back to the 200. So I'm trying to give you tips and clues, but make sure you're always looking at both the 50 and the 200, okay? Same thing for identifying your A's. So identifying your A's is going to be in a bearish market. It's normally going to happen off the 50 or in the 200, or 50 or the 200, excuse me. And you're going to see this in your sell zones, okay, in your sell zones. So this cycle is going to always start with an anchor M, and it's going to always end with an anchor W. Notice how here, this is GU, which is a slower pair than GJ. And notice how the pullbacks don't just happen off of the 50, but it comes back to the 200 as well. Not just the 50, but the 200 as well. So this is an example for both of them, just so you can kind of get a gist of, okay, this is what it could potentially end up looking like for me if I am on the charts, okay? So making sure that you can identify these things is just as important as being able to see that anchor. Because in the midst of knowing if you have an A or a V, this is going to help you know, okay, this is an area where I can really trade and have some good success. So let's kind of talk about, and I'm going to move this out the way really quick. Let's talk about where you should take what positions you should be taking in what areas, right? So in a bearish market or a bullish market, right? I'm going to actually pull up, I'm going to do a mini whiteboard situation here for just a moment, just so y'all can kind of see what I'm meaning, okay? So let's move this out the way for just a second. We know that there are 2 cycles, right? We just talked about it a few moments ago. We know that we have a buy zone and we know that we have a sell zone. So we have our buy zone, WVVM, right? And our sell zone, AAW. If you're an intraday trader, the best possible place for you to look for positions is always going to be that first V in a bullish market, okay? Or that first A in a bearish market, okay? Why is that? Normally, there's not going to be too much pullback. There's not going to be too much, unless there's some crazy news or something. You're going to be able to get into this trade and be at the very beginning of this cycle and have some really good significant pips that you can make, okay? And I made it green on purpose because this green means go, right? You shouldn't have many worries here besides checking news and all of those things when you're trading at the first A or B. Now, when it comes to the second A or B, the second V, second A. I'm going to put that in orange. You're going to be a little bit cautious here because this is going to be trading into the anchor. So if a sell zone ends, if a sell zone ends with an anchor W, then once I've gotten into a trade here, once it comes down here, it's going to start consolidating to make this anchor. So I want to make sure that I'm prepared. So can you still take a trade and look for the 35 to 50 pips in the orange areas or your second V's and second A's? Absolutely. But we're going to trade with more caution here. So if you're not comfortable, if you're not sure what type of anchor is going to form, and I know you're not sure because we don't know what anchor is coming. There are several different variations. So instead of being a little bit riskier here, this is going to be the area where I'm going to say, instead of me going for 50 pips, let me go for about 30, 35, right? Just to make sure if she does decide to make this anchor early, or let's say she starts to make a half a bat or a head and shoulders type situation, that's going to be a lot of consolidation that we're stuck in. So we want to make sure that we're taking preventative measures, right? And if we need to, also use your trailing stop to kind of help you while you're trading. And then last but surely not least, and I use my colors are on purpose, guys. Last but surely not least is going to be our anchors. Now, can you take and or find positions here? You sure can. There will absolutely be entries for trend traders, counter trend traders, all of those things here. The reason why I put that in red, this is literally, if you're trying to intraday trade, just be super careful, guys. You're literally trading in the trap. I just showed you all why this is considered the trap. So if you're taking positions here, I would even recommend or prefer that you would be scalping. Don't come over here looking for 50 and 80 and 90 pips. Come over here with proper expectations of, okay, I might be able to get a good 15, a good 10 here, but I'm not expecting any more out of it until price action gets out of said anchor, okay? So this is why that first V or first A is going to always be the ideal place to look for those higher probability positions. I'm not saying don't trade inside of the anchor at all. I'm not saying don't trade at your second A or V. I'm saying trade those areas with caution. This is why knowing where we are, right? Y'all don't go on road trips or travel without having your GPS. Y'all probably don't even go down the street without using your GPS. Knowing where you are is just as important as knowing where you're going. So if I know where I am in the cycle, I know how I need to be trading and what type of opportunities I need to be looking for. All right, guys, hopefully this has helped you and given you a little bit of clarity. I will see you on the next session.